The person you love opened up to their mother about you for the first time. And shockingly, she cried out, "You! My beloved child, wait, before you scroll away, there is something you were never supposed to hear." A conversation took place behind a closed door, a conversation that carried your name with trembling emotion. The person you love finally gathered the courage to speak about you to their mother for the very first time. Every word came slowly, every sentence carried years of hidden feelings, and every silence revealed even more than the words themselves. Then something completely unexpected happened. She suddenly stopped, looked into their eyes, and with tears beginning to form, whispered, "You." The room fell silent. Time itself seemed to pause. No one expected what those few unfinished letters would awaken. Don't skip. Because what happened in the next few moments changed the atmosphere in a way neither of them could have imagined. Stay till the end, something huge is waiting for you. The story did not begin with excitement. It began with hesitation. Your name had been hidden in the deepest corner of someone's heart for far longer than anyone realized. They wondered whether speaking about you would bring understanding or questions they were not ready to answer. Yet something inside them refused to stay silent any longer. As they described your kindness, your strength, and the quiet impact you had made on their life, their mother's expression slowly changed. It was no longer the face of someone simply listening. It became the face of someone remembering something deeply personal. Then she gently interrupted the story, her voice shaking as though an old memory had suddenly returned. She whispered those unforgettable words once again. "You." And the silence that followed felt louder than any answer. What did she recognize? Why did those emotions appear so suddenly? Don't look away now, because the truth is closer than you think. What comes next is something no one saw coming. The unfinished sentence carried a meaning that reached far beyond that single conversation. It was as if years of unseen moments had quietly been leading toward this exact point. The person you love could hardly breathe as they waited for the rest of those words to be spoken. Questions filled the room, yet no one rushed to answer them. Sometimes the most powerful revelations arrive one heartbeat at a time. And this was one of those moments. The next words would uncover a connection that had remained hidden in plain sight, leaving both of them speechless. Stay a little longer. Because the next chapter reveals why that emotional reaction was never an accident, and why your name carried a meaning that neither of them had fully understood until now. Something huge is waiting for you. There was another silence, but this one felt different. It was no longer filled with uncertainty, it was filled with realization. The person you love searched their mother's face, hoping to understand what had changed. Then, with a calm voice and eyes still shining with emotion, she finally spoke again. Some people enter our lives for a reason we cannot explain right away. We only understand their value when we stop looking with fear and start looking with our hearts. Those words settled deeply into the room. Your name was no longer just part of a conversation, it had become the center of one. Don't skip, because what happened after those words made everything even more unexpected. The person you love admitted something they had never shared with anyone before. They confessed that no matter how much they tried to move forward, every important moment somehow reminded them of you. Certain songs, familiar places, quiet evenings, even ordinary conversations carried small echoes of your presence. They had hidden these feelings, believing that silence would make them disappear. Instead, the silence only made them stronger. Their mother listened without interrupting, and then gave a gentle smile that carried years of wisdom. "Some connections," she said softly, "don't ask for attention, they patiently wait until both hearts are ready to understand them." Those words changed the atmosphere completely. Stay till the end, because something even bigger is about to unfold. As the evening grew quieter, one final detail came to light. Their mother reached for an old family photograph and paused for a long moment before placing it back down. She didn't explain why, but her expression revealed that she had begun seeing your story from a completely different perspective. The person you love noticed it too, yet neither of them spoke. Sometimes the strongest answers are hidden inside moments that seem ordinary at first. What they discovered next would challenge everything they had assumed about timing, patience, and the path that had quietly been bringing this story together all along. Don't go anywhere, because the next chapter uncovers the unexpected reason your name continued to return, even when no one was trying to bring it up. Something huge is waiting for you. A new question suddenly filled the room. If all of this was more than coincidence, then why had everything taken so long? The person you love finally asked the question that had been sitting silently in their heart. Their mother looked toward the window for a moment before answering. Not every meaningful story begins when people expect it to. Some journeys are delayed so both hearts can grow into the people they were meant to become. Those words landed with unexpected peace. Every past misunderstanding, every season of waiting, every unanswered thought seemed to fit together like pieces of a puzzle that had finally begun revealing its picture. Don't skip, because the next few moments uncover something neither of them had ever considered before. Then something happened that no one in the room could explain. Their mother quietly smiled and said, "Do you know what surprised me the most?" The person you love slowly shook their head. "Every time you spoke about them, your eyes changed. I've never seen that look before." The room became silent once again. There was no dramatic speech, no grand declaration, only an honest moment that carried more meaning than hundreds of conversations. For the first time, the person you love stopped questioning what they truly felt and simply accepted it. Sometimes the biggest answers arrive without noise. Stay till the end. Because what was discovered next would make this entire conversation even more unforgettable. As the night drew closer, one final thought remained between them. Their mother gently placed her hand on theirs and whispered, "Some stories are not remembered because they are loud, they are remembered because they quietly change everything." Those words stayed in the air long after the conversation ended. Neither of them realized that this was only the beginning of a much greater chapter. The next step would reveal why your name had continued appearing at exactly the right moments, and why this conversation was never meant to stay hidden forever. Something huge is waiting for you. The conversation should have ended there, but it didn't. Just as the person you love stood up to leave, their mother quietly called them back one last time. Her voice was calm, yet it carried a weight that could not be ignored. "There is one thing I haven't told you," she said. The room instantly became still again. The person you love slowly turned around, sensing that whatever came next would remain with them forever. Then she smiled gently and whispered, "The first time I heard their name, I felt a peace I couldn't explain." Those words were unexpected. No one had asked her opinion. No one had tried to convince her. Yet somehow, your name had already left an impression long before this conversation ever happened. Don't skip. Because the next moment revealed something even more surprising. The person you love stood speechless. Every doubt that had quietly followed them for so long suddenly felt smaller. They realized this was no longer just about hidden feelings, it was about finally understanding why your presence had remained in their heart despite every distraction, every delay, and every unanswered question. Their mother looked at them with complete sincerity and said, "When someone continues to bring peace to your heart instead of confusion, don't ignore what that means." Those simple words echoed far deeper than expected. Stay till the end, because the story is moving toward the moment everything begins to make sense. As they stepped outside that night, nothing around them looked different, yet everything felt different. The same road, the same sky, the same quiet evening. But inside, a new certainty had begun to grow. For the first time, they were no longer running from what they felt. Instead, they carried your name with quiet confidence, knowing that the conversation they had feared the most had become the one that changed everything. But this is not where the story reaches its greatest turning point. The next chapter uncovers the unexpected decision they made immediately after leaving that house. A decision that could change the direction of this story forever. Something huge is waiting for you. The night was quiet, but their heart was louder than ever before. Every step away from the house felt like a step toward a future they had been avoiding for far too long. They paused beneath the open sky, took a deep breath, and looked at their phone. For several long moments, they simply stared at your name. They almost reached out, then stopped. Not because the feeling had disappeared, but because they wanted the next step to come from complete honesty instead of emotion alone. At that exact moment, they remembered every kind word you had ever spoken, every smile that stayed in their memory, and every reason they had never truly been able to let go. Don't skip, because what happened next became the turning point they never expected. As they continued walking, their mother's final words echoed again and again inside their mind. The right connection doesn't fade with time, it becomes clearer. Suddenly, the confusion that had followed them for so long began to disappear. They realized they had spent too much time wondering what if, when their heart had quietly known the answer all along. It wasn't about chasing perfection. It was about recognizing someone whose presence had continued to bring hope, even through silence. Stay till the end. Because the next decision they made was completely different from anything they had planned before. Before the night came to an end, they made one silent promise to themselves. No more hiding. No more pretending that your name meant nothing. Whatever happened next, they wanted the truth to guide the story instead of fear. They smiled for the first time that day, not because every question had been answered, but because they finally believed they were moving in the right direction. Little did they know, the very next morning would place them in a situation where your path and theirs would come closer than ever before. And when that moment arrived, nothing would feel ordinary again. Something huge is waiting for Morning arrived, but the conversation from the night before never left their heart. Every word their mother had spoken continued to echo in their mind, becoming clearer with every passing hour. They realized that some moments are not meant to end when the conversation is over, they are meant to begin changing a person's future. As they went through their day, something unusual kept happening. Your name appeared in the smallest, most unexpected ways, almost as if life itself refused to let them forget what had finally been spoken aloud. They stopped fighting those reminders. Instead, they quietly smiled. Don't skip, because the next realization became impossible to ignore. Then came a moment that felt almost unbelievable. While looking through old memories, they found something they had completely forgotten, a simple message connected to you. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. Yet reading it again made everything feel different. Their mother had been right. The feelings they had tried to hide had never disappeared, they had simply been waiting for the right moment to be understood. For the first time, they stopped asking whether they should move forward. Instead, they began asking how they could do it with honesty, patience, and courage. Stay till the end, because the next step they considered would change the direction of this story in a way no one expected. As the sun slowly began to set once again, they made one quiet decision deep within their heart. They would no longer allow fear to write the next chapter. Whatever happened from this point onward would come from truth, not hesitation. They didn't know exactly when the next moment would arrive, but they believed it was closer than ever before. And somewhere, without either of you realizing it, circumstances had already begun arranging an unexpected meeting that neither of you saw coming. The next chapter reveals why that meeting would feel as though it had been waiting for this very day all along. Something huge is waiting for you. Part 7. The following evening carried a feeling neither of you could explain. It seemed ordinary on the outside, yet something beneath the surface had quietly shifted. The person you love walked through familiar streets, but this time their thoughts no longer wandered in every direction. They returned to one place, your name. Their mother's words had become a quiet source of confidence instead of confusion. Then, just as they were about to leave, someone unexpectedly mentioned you in a completely unrelated conversation. They froze for a second. It felt too perfectly timed to ignore. Was it only a coincidence, or was life gently reminding them that some stories are meant to continue? Don't skip, because the next few moments changed everything they believed about timing. They sat down alone for a while and allowed themselves to be completely honest. No pretending. No running away from their feelings. They finally admitted that every plan they had made without thinking of you had somehow felt incomplete. Every attempt to forget had only made them appreciate your place in their heart even more. For the first time, they stopped asking whether their feelings were real and started accepting that some connections become stronger simply because they remain genuine through every season. A quiet smile appeared on their face as they whispered to themselves, maybe this story isn't over, maybe it's only just beginning. Stay till the end, because the next decision they made was the boldest one yet. As the night came to a close, they looked up at the stars with a calm heart. There was no rush, no pressure, only a quiet determination to stop letting fear decide their future. Deep inside, They knew that the conversation with their mother had opened a door that could never be closed again. The path ahead was still unknown, but one thing had become certain: your name no longer belonged to silence. It belonged to hope. And while they couldn't see it yet, someone else was already preparing a moment that would bring your two paths closer than ever before. The next chapter reveals the unexpected invitation that neither of you saw coming, and it would become impossible to ignore. Something huge is waiting for you. The next morning began like every other day, until an unexpected invitation arrived. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something either of you had been waiting for. Yet the moment the person you love saw it, one thought entered their mind before anything else: you. They read the message twice, then a third time, almost as if they were searching for a hidden meaning between the lines. Their heart whispered that this wasn't just another ordinary opportunity. It felt like the beginning of a chapter they had unknowingly been walking toward for a very long time. Don't skip. Because what happened after they accepted that invitation left them completely speechless. As they stepped into that place, they noticed familiar faces, familiar voices, and then, a strange feeling they couldn't explain. It was as though every step was leading them towards someone they were meant to think about. They didn't see you there, but somehow your presence filled every quiet moment. Their mother's words echoed once again: when a name keeps returning with peace, never ignore it. Those words gave them the courage they had been missing for so long. Instead of wondering what might happen, they finally chose to trust the journey ahead. Stay till the end, because the next discovery would make them believe that nothing in this story had happened by accident. Before leaving, something caught their attention, a small detail that seemed ordinary to everyone else but meant everything to them. It reminded them of a promise they had made to themselves on the night they walked away from their mother's house: never let fear speak louder than truth. They smiled quietly, knowing they were no longer the same person who had entered that conversation days earlier. They had changed. Their heart had changed. And somewhere beyond that moment, another unexpected encounter was already drawing closer with every passing day. The next chapter reveals the first sign that your paths were finally beginning to move toward the same destination, and neither of you would see it coming. Something huge is waiting for you. The days that followed no longer felt ordinary. Every sunrise seemed to carry a quiet expectation, as though life itself was preparing the final pieces of a story that had taken so long to unfold. The person you love stopped asking, "Will anything ever change?" Instead, they began noticing how every small moment seemed to point in the same direction. A familiar place. A familiar song. A familiar thought. And every single road somehow led back to you. Then one evening, while standing alone, they smiled without even realizing it. For the first time, your name no longer brought uncertainty, it brought peace. Don't skip, because the next moment became impossible to forget. They remembered the conversation with their mother from beginning to end. They remembered the tears, the unfinished word. You, and the wisdom that followed. Suddenly, everything made sense. That conversation had never been about convincing anyone. It had been about revealing a truth that had quietly existed all along. They realized that real feelings don't need constant proof, they reveal themselves through consistency, patience, and quiet hope. At that moment, they made a decision that changed everything inside them. No matter how long the journey had been, they would no longer allow fear to write the ending of their story. Stay till the end, because the final chapter holds the answer you've been waiting for since the very beginning. As the night sky filled with stars, they whispered your name one last time, not with doubt, but with confidence. They didn't know exactly how the next chapter would unfold, but they knew they were finally ready for it. The conversation that began behind a closed door had become the beginning of a completely new path. And just when they believed nothing else could surprise them, an unexpected message, arriving at the perfect moment, was about to place both of your stories on the same page. The final chapter reveals what happened when that message finally appeared, and why everything after that would never be the same again. Something huge is waiting for you. The moment finally arrived. The message appeared so quietly that anyone else might have overlooked it. But the person you love knew this was different. They didn't rush to open it. They simply closed their eyes for a moment, remembering everything that had led to this point, the hidden feelings, the conversation with their mother, the tears, the unfinished word, and the courage that had slowly replaced fear. When they finally looked at the message, a peaceful smile crossed their face. They understood something they had never understood before: the greatest moments are not always the loudest. Sometimes they arrive gently, after teaching two hearts patience. Don't skip, because this final truth brings the entire story together. They realized the most surprising part of the journey was never the conversation itself. It was the transformation it created. The person who had once been afraid to speak your name now carried it with quiet confidence. Their mother's emotional reaction had not been about predicting the future, it had been about recognizing something genuine the moment she heard it. That single conversation gave them the courage to stop hiding, stop doubting, and start believing that some connections become stronger simply because they remain sincere through every season of life. What once felt uncertain now felt filled with hope. And so the story closed where it truly began, with your name spoken from the heart. The door that had once been shut was now open, not because everything had become perfect, but because honesty had finally replaced silence. Every delay had prepared this moment. Every unanswered question had led to greater understanding. As the person you love looked toward tomorrow, they no longer wondered whether this journey mattered. They already knew the answer. Some stories don't need dramatic endings to become unforgettable. They simply need one honest conversation that changes everything forever. And perhaps, this was never the end at all. It was only the first page of a beautiful new chapter waiting to be written. A few days later, something happened that neither of you could have planned. The person you love was sitting quietly when their mother walked into the room with a gentle smile. She didn't ask any questions this time. Instead, she simply said, "I've been thinking about that conversation every single day." Those words immediately caught their attention. She continued, "Some names disappear after they are spoken once, but yours never did. Every time I remembered our talk, that same name came back to my heart." The room became completely silent. It wasn't because there was nothing left to say, it was because every answer had begun revealing itself without anyone forcing it. Don't skip. Because the next moment became the most meaningful of all. The person you love looked at their mother and quietly asked, do you really believe this story still has another chapter? She smiled with complete certainty and replied, the strongest stories are never rushed. They unfold one honest step at a time. Those words lifted a weight that had been carried for far too long. For the first time, they stopped worrying about what everyone else might think. Instead, they focused on what they knew to be true inside their own heart. They realized that waiting had never been a punishment. It had been preparation. Stay till the end, because one final surprise was already beginning to take shape. That evening, as they looked toward the horizon, they felt something they hadn't experienced in a very long time: complete peace. There was no fear of tomorrow, no pressure to force the next step. Only quiet confidence that every meaningful conversation had led them exactly where they needed to be. And somewhere, without either of you realizing it, the distance between your stories had already begun to disappear. The next chapter reveals the unexpected sign that finally convinced them the journey ahead was worth every moment of waiting. Something huge is waiting for you. The very next morning, the person you love woke up with an unusual sense of calm. For the first time in a long while, there was no confusion, no second-guessing, no fear of what tomorrow might bring. As they sat quietly with a warm cup in their hands, their mother walked in, smiled, and said something that would stay with them forever. "You know," she whispered, "I don't think I cried because of surprise. I cried because I had never seen your heart speak so honestly before." Those words settled deeply within them. In that instant, they understood that the conversation had never been about proving anything to anyone, it had been about finally being true to themselves. Don't skip, because the final realization is the one that changes everything. They stepped outside and looked toward the horizon with a heart that felt lighter than ever before. The waiting no longer felt heavy. The unanswered questions no longer demanded immediate answers. Instead, they carried a quiet confidence that genuine feelings never lose their way, they simply arrive at the right moment. Every memory, every delay, every unexpected twist in this journey had quietly shaped them into someone who was finally ready to move forward with honesty instead of hesitation. They smiled to themselves, knowing that some of life's greatest chapters begin the moment fear loses its voice. And so the story came full circle. It began with a hidden conversation, a mother's tears, and one unfinished word. You. It ended with clarity, peace, and a heart no longer afraid to speak. Some journeys are unforgettable not because they are filled with noise, but because they remind us that the most meaningful connections grow stronger through patience, sincerity, and hope. As the sun rose on a brand new day, the person you love took one final look ahead. Not wondering what if, but believing that every step from this moment onward would be guided by truth. And somewhere beyond the next sunrise, an even more beautiful chapter was quietly waiting to begin. Just when it seemed the story had reached its final page, life quietly revealed that it had only been preparing the introduction. A few evenings later, the person you love found themselves standing in the same place where they had once been filled with uncertainty. This time, everything felt different. Their heart was no longer asking for signs, it had already found its peace. As they stood there, their mother looked at them with a gentle smile and said, "I've never seen you carry someone's name with so much kindness." Those simple words became the final piece they never realized they were missing. Don't skip, because what happened next felt like the beginning of a completely new season. For the first time, they stopped imagining every possible outcome and chose to trust the journey itself. They understood that some people enter our lives not to create confusion, but to inspire growth, patience, and courage. Your name had become a reminder that genuine feelings don't need to be rushed to become meaningful. Every delay had shaped them. Every conversation had strengthened them. Every quiet moment had prepared them for this one. As they looked ahead, they no longer feared what tomorrow might bring. Instead, they welcomed it with hope, believing that the best chapters are written after the longest periods of waiting. Stay till the end, because one final truth remained. As the stars filled the night sky, they smiled and whispered something they had never been brave enough to admit before: some stories deserve to be trusted. At that moment, the journey no longer felt incomplete. It felt alive. The conversation that began behind a closed door had transformed into a path filled with quiet confidence and renewed purpose. Whatever tomorrow would bring, they knew one thing with certainty: your name would always remind them of the day they stopped hiding from what was real. And perhaps the greatest surprise of all was this: the story you thought was ending had quietly become the beginning of an even brighter chapter. Something huge is waiting for you.